Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Nandana Braja Janandhanaya Jasodanandana Braja Janandhanaya Jamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Hevan Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Giri Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Braja Janandhanaya Jasodanandana Braja Janandhanaya Jamuna Tira Vana Charimu Jamuna Tira Vana Charimu Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hare-rama Hare-rama Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hey Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Nitai Gaur Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo Nitai Gaur Haribo 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jai Prabhupada Gaur Premanande Hari 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 Bol Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Magyan Timirandasya Girajana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shri Bhakti Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pacharine Nivrasesa Sunyavadi Paschatya De Satarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Paevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gaur Pimanandi Shri Ram Jai Ram. So we're in a series of days leading up to the appearance, which is tomorrow, for Shri Ram, the personality of Godhead. Ramadi Murti Shukalani Mamena Tishtan Nana Avatarta Akaro Bhuvaneshu Kinchu Krishna Swayam Samabhava Paramam Pamanyo Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Out of all the manifestations of incarnations of the Supreme Lord, Sri Ram is one of the principal ones. He is the topmost within the category of the Vaikuntha realm. And his pastimes on earth are very much similar to Krishna's pastimes in the sense that he comes to relieve the world of the demoniac influence and to reestablish true eternal religious principles. Without the help of the Supreme Lord, there would be no chance that the human culture could actually survive because of the influence of irreligion, especially in this age of Kali, is quite pervasive. And the power of the living entities is so small that in this age it can never overcome that, what we say, tidal wave of irreligion. But when the Lord comes, he makes everything easier. And he does a lot of work himself, and he cleans the house, prepares it again for true religious principles. The devotees become enlivened, and the world again becomes at least peaceful for some time. Until after again, the demonic influence starts to reappear and then again cause havoc. So the appearance of Ram was actually 2 million years ago in the Treta Yuga. And he came along with 3 of his brothers. He is the incarnation of Lord Narayan in the spiritual world. Narayan, and then there is Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna. He is also known as Vasudev. So his appearance in the world is really fundamental and really establishing religious principles. And out of all of the manifestations, incarnations of the Supreme Lord, although Krishna is the supreme and the source of all incarnations, seems like Ram gets more attention and more understanding, because people have a very difficult time approaching Krishna, because Krishna doesn't follow any standard principles. He works according to his own level of understanding, which is completely transcendental to everything. But Ram combines his godlike nature along with high standards of morality, which are indications of how the living entities in the material world can learn how to practice spiritual life and also live a very peaceful and moral life in this world. So he's more, what we say, accessible in his particular message as he comes to reestablish religious principles. So we can learn, and we should learn, there is so many messages in the pastimes of Lord Ram. The main message is that one should follow Dharma, despite whatever other influences may come. Krishna will break Dharma in order to reestablish Dharma on another level, just like the principle of Dharma is truthfulness. And Ram becomes so truthful that even at the expense of his own best interests, or in general, he'll keep truth as the glorious principle. But Krishna will take truth and turn it upside down and make it, and give another standard of truth, which is a higher principle, but it seems to break the dharmic principle of truth, such as when he says, I'm not going to fight, and he's on the battle of Kurukshetra, and he has sworn for not fighting. But then, when his devotee gets in trouble, then he breaks his promise and he fights. Like that. And so we see that Krishna will, adjust his statements according to a higher principle, which people cannot follow in general. But Ram does it in such a way that it becomes accessible and is the standard for principles of morality. We were talking last night on how ultimately Ram got banished in the forest simply by the intrigue of Kaikeyi, who was influenced by her maidservant Manthara to turn the whole situation around and reject Ram as the next king of Ayodhya, and to reestablish her son Bharat on the throne, and to banish Ram in the forest for 14 years. So Ram accepted that because it came from his father, although it reluctantly came from his father, still it came from an authority. And Ram also taught the principles of following what we say authorized authority. And in Vedic culture, one's parents are considered to be authorized authority. Even if the parents are not up to standard, still one follows their parents because they are their parents. It's considered one of the authorities within society. Nowadays, people don't adhere to such principles, and they accept or reject based on what they like and don't like. And the parents are there and really have no influence, and not much, some influence over the directions of their children. But in Vedic culture, it was very there. And you can see that even in today, within the Indian culture, people very adhere to Dharma by following their parents, even if they disagree with them. And that's a high quality. So Ram did that. It wasn't beneficial, at least apparently, for him to just give up everything, leave to the forest, take on tree bark, and live like a mendicant when he was overwhelmingly accepted as the next king of Ayodhya. I mean, there were millions and millions of citizens in Ayodhya, and not one of them protested, or what we might say, not one of them was against Ram taking the throne, except this Kaikeyi and Manthara. And so he had such support, he was qualified, but he left it all on the request of his father, who was forced because he had given his promise to fulfill the promise of Kaikeyi when she asked. And in order to keep his promise as a Kshatriya, the true Kshatriya will not break their promise, even if it means their life. They will keep promise. Their word is like, written in stone. It's carved in stone. It's not changeable. Nowadays, there's so much sophistry. Sophistry is something that is half truth and half not truth. Goes on as truth, like that. So just like in business, people will do whatever they can to sell the product, and they'll use whatever language that is attractive to entice persons to buy their product. And therefore, it's a form of cheating, and it's actually lying in one sense, in order to gain some pecuniary results, or financial results. So nobody follows these things nowadays because it's Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga means do what you want to do because you are the authority. Haribol. That's what Kali's main program. Kali's main program is to get you to accept the fact that authority is not reliable or need to be followed. You can do whatever you think is best for your own self-interest. Of course, people are not qualified to understand what is their own self-interest and then act on it, and so therefore they follow Kali, who lures them into a type of sinful lifestyle where illicit sex, intoxication, and various types of activities go on which are sinful as a standard way on how to live in this world. And that's what we have today. And so that's Kali. But in the Vedic culture, following authority was absolute principle. And those who didn't follow authority were considered to be low class and were rejected in many circles as being somewhat of a rebel. So now Ram's in the forest, and they're in Chitrakoot, and now Bart, he comes back, and he finds out that Ram has been banned to the forest, and his mother has ordained that he now becomes the king of the world, the king of Ayodhya. He's shocked, and people are blaming him for what's happening. They're thinking it was his plot. So he's unfairly blamed for a situation that was created by his mother and with the help of her maidservant Mantara. And now he has to somehow or other vindicate himself or free himself from this false accusations. And everyone's blaming him. And they're also criticizing him and approaching him, but he gets tired of trying to explain, but ultimately people believe, they can see that he is not what we say avaricious or greedy for the kingdom. It wasn't his fault, it was all due to his mother. And so finally people accept. Now Bart is thinking, Ram should be the king. How can I cannot take the throne. He is the qualified one, he's the destined one. So Bart, he organizes his armies to go into the forest, and they cut really long paths within the forest, and they build so many houses for residents, and they make a path all the way to Ram where he is, and that was a long way. Took him many days and much work to get to where Ram was. And now he's approaching Ram. He takes off his shoes. He's also in a very humble state of mind. He's there with Sumatra, Vashishta, I'm sorry, not Sumatra, Vashishta, the priest of the Ayodhya city. along with one other person, his brother, Satrughna. So they're all approaching Ram. And Lakshman, from a distance, he sees the armies, and he thinks that now Bharat is coming to kill Ram so he can free himself from any further influence that Ram would have in trying to take back the throne. So Lakshman misjudges the whole situation, and he's like fire. He gets angry easy, but in a righteous way. And so he's going to fight that whole army by himself, and he's qualified. But ultimately, Ram says, no, it's not like that. He's come in a different way. I can sense that he is not coming. He's coming in to talk, to discuss why I'm in the forest and try to bring me back to the kingdom. So there's a beautiful meeting between the two, and it's really sweet and deep. There's so much love between the two. And Ram wants to stay in the forest and simply follow the instructions of his father. Bharat says, all the citizens want you on the throne. I am not the one to be the ruler. You are the one. I cannot take your place. Please come back. And he's begging him in so many ways. Ram's listening, and he can understand that Bhart's love for him is deep. And their love between the both of them is so deep that they only want the benefit of each other. So finally, it's understood that Ram is not going to budge his position. He's going to stay in the forest and accept the 14 years of exile as his duty to both his father, and there is a higher duty which will be revealed later. And then, of course, Bharat can only acquiesce or agree with Ram. But he says, I cannot rule the kingdom. I will go back. Please give me your padukas. Padukas means shoes. So the Ram gives it to him. And when he goes back, he takes Ram's shoes and puts it on the throne. And he goes to an area which is called Nandigram. It's about 14 kilometers from Ayodhya. And there's an area there. When we were visiting that area many years ago, I saw the place. It's simply a little pond with a little structure there where Bharat lived for 14 years. And all he ate for 14 years was barley cooked in cow urine. That's all. He performed severe austerities. And he would go to Ayodhya from time to time just to deal with the administration work. But he always did it on behalf of Ram, never thinking that he was actually the king. And he wanted to show everyone that actually Ram is the real king. And so this example here of both selflessness between the both of them just came to a higher state of what we say, quality amongst great personalities. They're both thinking of the welfare of each other and both wants to serve each other for the benefit of the other person. This is what bhakti is really about in its essence. Bhakti is about serving the Lord, serving the spiritual master, serving the Vaishnavas, without trying to gain anything from your own personal self. That is real bhakti. That is called, it's called, what is it called? Ananya bhakti. Ananya bhakti, that means that bhakti that is completely pure. There's not a trace of impurity. That means there's no jnana, there's no karma, there's no yoga, there's nothing. All there is pure love. And that principle is what Prabhupada and the Acharyas have taught us, that bhakti simply means to serve for the pleasure of the Lord, to serve for the pleasure of the Lord's devotees, to push on the Krishna conscious movement and make one an instrument as for the mercy of others, as an instrument for the spiritual master's mission in the world. That is real bhakti. To come to that stage of bhakti requires one to actually take this process very seriously and develop the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, because through the chanting of the holy name, one develops a higher taste. This is where the higher taste comes from. Higher taste means that taste that is sweet, that is a desirable, that cannot be left aside. And that's when we chant the holy name in that mood of just submitting ourselves to the instructions of the spiritual master without any personal motivation. Personal motivation is automatically fulfilled through the process of unalloyed bhakti. It's interesting. If you try to be happy, you won't be. If you try to serve, you'll be happy. Or if you try to be happy, and if you did get a little bit of happiness, that happiness will disappear within due course of time. But if you make your mind just to serve, how can I serve? How can I serve to please? We have that experience in this world when we come close to someone who's very dear to us. We always think about what can I do for that person to make them happy, to do something to benefit them in life. It becomes a feature of, even in the material sense, people have that relationship to some degree. They put their own interests aside for the interests of others. And even if they have to suffer, in doing that, they consider that suffer their greatest happiness. It's interesting. That's how bhakti works. As it says, Radharani loves Krishna so much that she only wants to be with Krishna. But she knows that Krishna also has desires to be with the other gopis. So, in order to facilitate Krishna's desire to be with the other gopis, she will go to the other gopis and teach those gopis how best to make Krishna happy, how to please Krishna. She will put her own self aside just for the benefit of Krishna and serve another gopi. So she teaches from that platform what is real love. Real love means, even if I have to suffer, even if I'm neglected, even if I have to give up something that is dear to me, it doesn't matter, as long as I can serve you to make you happy. That's bhakti. That's what Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas and ultimately is teaching. And that was the mood between Bart and Ram. Their love for each other was so deep that they could only think of the welfare of each other. I mean, Ram did everything he could to try to convince Bart to take the throne. He could understand Bart was actually qualified to rule. There was no question about that. But Bart could not possibly do that because he felt that the whole situation was done in a way to cheat Ram out of his position. And therefore, he wasn't going to be implicated in this type of activity. So even though Ram said, please go back, take care of, Ram didn't even know that his father had left the world. His father died simply out of separation. That's an interesting story, what happened. When Dasarat was going through so much suffering after agreeing with Kaikeyi for those benedictions of sending his son to the forest, he finally revealed why it happened. And he said many, many years ago, I was hunting in the forest, and I heard what I thought was an elephant drinking water at the side of a lake. And I shot my arrow in that direction. But then I heard a sound of a cry from a human cry. I ran to the spot, and I had hit this one young boy, who was a Brahmin, in the chest with the arrow. The boy was not dead, but he was dying. The boy said, why did you do that? I have come here to gather water from my parents who are old and invalid, and they depend on me. to take care of them. Now I will be gone and they will suffer and die because no one will take care of them. Ram understood he made a big mistake, and he went back to the parents, and he offered his most humble apologies and anything that he could do to serve them. They forgave him for his mistake, but they also said, we will also have to curse you. And the curse is that just like we are feeling separation, we will die because of the separation of our son. You will also lose your son in the future and die because of that. So karma works like that. We can't see how karma works, but it works. For us, for devotees, when you come to Krishna consciousness, you still have your karma with you. But as you engage in devotional service, and as you take shelter of a spiritual master, and when the spiritual master agrees to accept you as a disciple, you are removed from all of the reactions, not all, but most of the reactions of your previous karma. But there is a residue karma that is still there. It's called parabdha karma. It's that Krishna allows you to keep a little bit of your previous karma just so you can somehow overcome that and then reach the stage of perfection. It's called that karma that is fructifying in the immediate time period. So that's a little bit of an effort that devotees have. But when devotees do something wrong and they act within the material way, or if they break some of the principles, they don't get karma, because as long as they take shelter of the process of devotional service, and because they slip, doesn't mean they give up devotional service, but still there's a reaction. So that reaction is not karma, it's Krishna. Krishna has given you what we call a slap, just to get you back to where you're supposed to be. It's a little bit of, it's like when you do something wrong and the parents are not going to punish you, but they want to get you back to where you're supposed to be, so they give you a little shaken up so you get the point. So that's not karma. It looks like karma, but it's not. But sometimes, if we don't practice Krishna consciousness to its fullest extent, we may find ourselves still accepting a little bit of our previous material karma. And of course, on your second initiation, then all of the karmas is absolved by the power of the spiritual master. And then one can execute devotional service without any interference, because as long as your karma is there from your material life, you will still have trouble with devotional service. Just like if you're destined to get a large amount of money for something you've done, or some inheritance or some good fortune, you won't get it, because, or if you do get it and you use it in the wrong way, it'll bring you down. So Krishna doesn't want to see that, so he won't allow that karma to fructify. Or if there is some sinful reaction and some suffering, and that suffering will cause you to become disturbed by that suffering, Krishna will absolve that karma through the spiritual master, so you can keep your mind focused easily and nicely on the process of devotional service. So that's how the laws of karma somewhat play out for a devotee. It's a lot different than the non-devotees, who simply are getting their karma constantly in everything they do, either immediate or extended karma. So when you take the devotional service, even if you get some difficulties, or even if you get some unpredictable good fortune, it is simply just a tokenism. It's not actually the full force of the karma. And that helps you to stay fixed in devotional service. That's the goal, ultimately. So Ram's in the forest, and now at one point, one of Ravana's armies, headed by 3 very powerful generals, they came and they attacked Ram and Lakshman. And this took at a place called Panchavali. It's in the area of Nasik, in the India today. And there was a big fight, 14,000 Rakshasa soldiers headed by Dushan and Trikuta, I think three powerful generals. Ram alone, without the help of Lakshman. Lakshman was guarding Sita, and he hid her in a very safe place and stood there, and Ram destroyed the whole 14,000 soldiers, except for one particular soldier. His name was Alambada. He somehow escaped and got away. And then he went back to Ravana and told Ravana what had actually happened. Ravana hadn't met Ram at the time. And then he was astonished that this human being, because Ram plays the role of a human being, had wiped out one of his most powerful armies, along with the very powerful generals. And then this Alambada kept saying, well, actually, you know, he has a beautiful wife, and she's just perfect for your collection of ladies, because that's what he used to do, collect ladies. We call the ancient Casanova. I don't know if that fits or not, but yeah, that was his program. People want to be like that, but they can't because they're not as good as Ravana. But anyway. So he's describing Sita, and Ravana is getting really, really excited hearing the beauty of Sita. And he's thinking that, yeah, she should actually be one of my principal queens. So now, after hearing about that, he's thinking, how can I, abduct this lady who's protected by these two powerful soldiers who destroyed my army? So he goes to one of his followers named Maricha. Now Maricha had some experience with Ram many years ago, when Vishwamitra Muni came to the kingdom of Ayodhya and asked Dasaratha if he could have Ram and Lakshman to kill two demons, Maricha and Subahu, who were defiling all of the sacrifices of the great sages. And so, reluctantly, but finally he agreed, and Ram and Lakshman went. And when these two demons came to defile the sacrifice, Ram shot two arrows. One he killed Subahu, and the other one he hit Maricha in the chest and knocked him 800 miles into the ocean. And now Maricha, he quit after being, what we say, smashed by Ram's arrow. He decided this program of demons was not so good, so he retired. He was on the unemployment line of the demons, collecting unemployment. So he was hiding in the forest. So Ram goes to him, Ravana goes to him, and he says, Maricha, I have a little service for you. Oh yes, what is that? And he describes what he wants done. He wants Maricha to lure Ram away from Sita so he can capture Sita. And after he hears the name Ram, it says that just by hearing the word Ram, he would shake in fright and almost lose his life. He was so fearful of Ram. And he had given up all of his activities as a Rakshasa. And now Ravana wants him to again jump back into the action. And so Maricha says, forget it. I'm not going. I'm not going to do it. Ravana gets angry, and he threatens him. He says, if you don't follow what I want you to do, then I'm going to kill you. So Maricha's stuck. If he doesn't follow Ravana, he'll be killed by Ravana. And if he follows Ravana, he'll be killed by Ram. So he's thinking, better to be killed by Ram. So he reluctantly agrees, and he has mystic power. And so Sita, Ram, and Lakshman are at the ashram of Chitrakoot. They're living very peacefully and enjoying the forest as much as they can. There's a few disturbances with demons once in a while, and Ram takes care of that. But now, it's about 1 year before they're meant to return to Ayodhya. And then this demon takes the form of this beautiful deer, unusual looking deer. He was effulgent, and it looked like his body was full of various valuable gems and various precious ornaments. And he goes prancing around the ashram where Lakshman, Sita, and Ram are. And Sita sees the deer, and she says, "Oh, Ram, look at that beautiful deer. It would be wonderful if we can have that deer. I'll take it back to Ayodhya when we go back. He'll be my favorite pet." And Ram's looking, and he's not saying anything. And then Lakshman, he says, "I know all 8,400,000 species, and this is not one of them." It looks like a demon in disguise. But Sita's not ready to hear anything else. She wants that deer. So here, attachment to material things. She's attached. And Ram wants to satisfy her as much as he can. But he doesn't want to leave her alone. So the deer starts prancing around and starts running into the forest. And Sita says, "Oh, Ram, there he goes. Please go get him. Bring him back." So Ram looks at Lakshman and says, "I'm going, but you stay here because it's dangerous to leave Sita alone." So Lakshman stays with Sita. Then he draws a circle. It's a chakra. And he puts Sita in the middle of that circle. And he says, "Don't leave this circle. And I'm here to protect you." Sita her mind becomes somewhat, let me say, unusually critical. And for no reason, she starts to look at Lakshman. She says, "Oh." And then all of a sudden, there is a sound, a cry. And then, "Lakshman, help! Lakshman, help!" What happened was that the deer, who was actually a demon Maricha, ran so far that Ram chased him, and then he fired his arrow, and he hit Maricha in the form of a deer, and Maricha's dying. Maricha uses his voice to imitate Ram's voice perfectly. And he's calling for Lakshman, imitating the voice of Ram, asking for help. And then Sita, she also hears that, and Lakshman also. So Sita goes, "Oh, your brother's in trouble. Go help him." He says, "I can't leave you alone. It's too dangerous." And then she starts to say, "Well, you know, you've always wanted, you were always interested in me. And now I can see why you're not going." Wow, when Lakshman heard that, he became so unhappy. At the same time, he was upset about that. He never, and his service to Ram and Sita, he never even looked at her directly. He would always look at her feet when he talked to her. He respected her like his mother in all respects. But now she's saying something else, that he's greedy for her. And that was like an arrow that hit him in the chest. He couldn't take that. So he said, "All right." And then, of course, he told her, "You stay within this circle. Don't leave. If you leave, it'll be dangerous. I'm going." So he did. He went into the forest. And then he found Ram, and Ram said, "What are you doing here? I told you not to leave Sita. Let's go back. She's in trouble." Meantime, before they were heading back, Ravana disguised himself as a sannyasi. He's like this beggar. And he's walking very slow, as if he's kind of like feeble and old. He comes to where Sita is. She's in that circle. He knows that as long as she's in that circle, he can't do anything. So he says, "Oh, Mataji, I'm a poor mendicant. I've been traveling for days and I haven't had any food. I haven't had anything. And I'm so weak and so tired. Please give me something to eat." She says, "Oh, I can see you need something. Please come and I will give it to you." He says, "No, I can't walk any farther. I'm about ready to fall over. Please come and bring it to me." And she becomes, what we say, seduced by his sweet words. She goes outside of the circle to give him something. And then he takes the advantages and grabs her. And then he takes her. And then Ravana had the power to fly. And so he flew up in the air. And that was the disappearance of Sita. And when Ram and Lakshman came back, then they couldn't find Sita. And Ram is chastising Lakshman severely for leaving Sita. Now she is God. So what's the message in that particular story? There's a few. One of the messages that Sita, although she's the goddess of fortune, and that means that she controls all of the wealth in the world, acting as an ordinary person, she wants something material for her own happiness. And at the expense of that, she causes so much trouble, and then eventually she becomes abducted by Ravana. And so that message is there that if we chase things in this material world for our own sense enjoyment, we don't know what the consequences will be. Sometimes the things look very attractive and sometimes even necessary. But a devotee should live in the mood of whatever Krishna arranges. Let me just serve the Lord, serve the devotees. And if I need something, Krishna will always make arrangements for me to take. Now, you might say, well, that's for sannyasis. That's for brahmacharis. But what about us grihastas? You know, we have to live with families. We have to make some efforts to get things we need. Yes, that is correct, but not beyond what is necessary. The scriptures say, Ishavasham idam sarvam yat kincha jagam jagat tena jaktena bundi jaha magridahakashaswidanam. That everything in the world is owned and controlled by the Supreme Lord. Everything animate and inanimate. And one is allowed to live according to their quota. And if they live according to what they need to live nicely, happily, then they can aspire to live for hundreds of years. Jai Shri Shri Panchatattva Ki Jai. So one is allowed to make a little endeavor for those who live in family life to secure what one needs in order to maintain the family. But if one becomes greedy for things beyond that, things that are not necessary or the so-called luxuries of this material, one gets trapped by the material energy. And that trapment causes one to struggle unnecessary and sometimes suffer because of that, what we say, wrong desire. So that was the message of this particular, how Sita apparently became influenced by some petty thing like a deer. So that's one of the main messages in the Ramayana. And Ram promised that whatever Sita wanted or needed when she was in the forest, he would make an effort to satisfy her. Because he knew for her to live in the forest was very, very difficult. Okay, we'll stop there and see if there's any comments, questions. You can ask anything in relationship to the principles of bhakti, execution of devotional service. Any comments, questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna. So you were at the beginning mentioning how there was this great love between Bharat and Ram, and you were describing pure devotional service. So could you maybe explain, like it is explained in the Bhagavatam by Kapila Dev, how devotional service can be performed also in the three gunas, contaminated, and how can we realize where we are and move to pure devotional service?
Well, in that description, in Kapila Dev's description in the third canto, it describes what are the contaminations of each of the three modes. So in that description you can see, you can hear, just like those who perform devotional service in the mode of ignorance, what is their desire? They pray to the Lord to destroy their enemies. So they have some prescribed persons who they think they're their enemies, so they want to overshadow them, overcome them. So they pray to the Lord and perform service to the Lord in order to get the power of the Lord to overcome their enemies. That's devotional service in the mode of ignorance. Devotional service in the mode of passion means I'm serving the Lord in order to get some material gain. I want a better position, I want some money, I want some security, material security, like that. In other words, they're actually worshiping Durga or what's this? Huh? Shiva's son, what's his name? Ganesh, yeah. They're worshiping Ganesh. So they mix in this desire for fruitive activities, and that's the mode of passion. So, and the mode of goodness has the contamination too, that one wants to be a very learned person and be seen as a learned person in devotional service. One wants to get some praise, get some facilities. Like that, it's more of a subtle type of material contamination. So all these are contaminations because they're in anything connected with the material energy is a form of contamination. So, but pure devotional service is described by Rupa Goswami as ayam lila sita sunya grana kamar anavritam anukulena krishna silanam bhakti uttama. That is this free from the desire for personal gain or subtle gain based on learning, becoming a great philosophical teacher of spiritual topics. Karma, no gyan, only pure bhakti. So pure bhakti is satisfying and it's easy. Pure bhakti is not so very difficult. I serve for the sake of service. I'm not looking for anything from my service except to please the object that I serve. I want to do my service nicely. So we offer our activities with devotion, with the desire to please. That's pure devotional service. And Krishna is always reciprocating with the devotee. The devotee is never like, well, I've given up all of these things. Krishna also serves the devotees too. Krishna takes care of his devotees. Krishna provides what the devotees need. And sometimes Krishna becomes so satisfied by the devotees' service that he gives them something material that they wanted, but they gave it up. So now he gives it to them anyway, just to show his affection for his devotee. So the devotee has no worries. The materialists are always worrying, what am I going to get? Am I going to enjoy what I'm going to get? Am I going to lose what I'm going to get? Or am I not going to get what I... Yeah, it's just the devotee just to serve, that's all. And he tries to do the service in the best possible way. The quality that we put into a service is an element of bhakti, to do the service in the nicest possible way, according to how best the service can be executed. Just to get things done is still a little bit in the mode of passion. But to do it with attention and with the desire to please, that is bhakti. And we do that when we develop a relationship, sometimes with a person in this world. We actually serve them in that way sometimes. But when we do it, because we don't know Krishna, we can't really develop that same attachment. But therefore, we have to develop our knowledge of Krishna. How do we develop our knowledge of Krishna? By hearing about Krishna and all his wonderful activities, his qualities, his relationships with his devotees. And Krishna is, the word Krishna means all attractive. The more you hear about him, the more you actually talk about him, the more you actually become attracted to him, because he's all attractive. But if we don't hear about him or don't talk about him, then we don't really develop a relationship with him in that knowledge that will cause us to want to please him in everything we do. So it's good to know Krishna. The more you know about him, the more you can serve him in that mood. And then it turns into love in different stages. Makes sense? Yeah, it's okay. Did you want to add anything or say anything? Thank you. Welcome. Yes, okay. You have a question?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I find myself many times in Lakshman's ungrateful situation. So I was just thinking, what is like the lesson that we can take from Lakshman's situation where he was attacked by Sita, then he tried to please her, but then he displeases Ram, then Ram is chastising him. So
well, he did something eventually.
Yeah, so how to understand his position, and when we find ourselves in similar situation, what is the learning?
I'm just a soul whose intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. Yeah. Famous rock and roll song, huh? Mishra, he's right on. So yeah, we're being misunderstood. Most of the time, people don't understand each other. It takes a person to develop a relationship with someone before you can actually understand someone. It's hard. So we make assumptions and sometimes say things or do things that are not in line with what is actually happening. So sometimes we get just like I know one devotee. He's my dear God brother, good friend. In this life, he gets blamed for things he doesn't do. Happens a lot. So it was happening throughout his life, and then so he went to an astrologer to find out why he's getting this kind of karma. The astrologer told him, well, in your previous life, you got credit for things you didn't do. So he's getting the balance of his karma. So we can't see how things are actually happening to us. But we know if we stay in devotional service, all these things will eventually disappear in due course of time. The power of bhakti overshadows all of your past activities. And even if you get misunderstood, the devotee doesn't care so much. He knows Krishna understands him, and that's all that counts. Yeah.
So when they say that when the Vaishnavas are satisfied, Krishna is satisfied. So if person is misunderstood and the Vaishnavas are not satisfied with him, but then if we say that Krishna understood his intentions, so I don't know, is it possible that in that case Krishna is satisfied but Vaishnavas are not?
You usually don't work like that. If you're satisfying the Vaishnavas, then you're satisfying Krishna. If you're offending the Vaishnavas, you know Krishna is not going to be satisfied with you. Because the Vaishnavas are dear to Krishna. And therefore, the best way to serve Krishna is to serve his devotees. To try to serve Krishna directly, Krishna is not much so inspired by those who try to approach him directly, but those who approach him through his devotees, then he gives his mercy. And if you please the devotees in a devotional way, not by pleasing them in a material way, but in a devotional way, then Krishna is automatically satisfied, pleased. So that's how we execute devotional service. We really focus on serving the devotees. That's the main thing. Put it a little closer.
Then when we are misunderstood in our service, then that's still okay, I guess.
What to do?
Yeah, anyway. Okay, what to do. Thank you.
Sometimes that happens. I can tell a story. Would you like to hear a story? About misunderstanding. It's an ISKCON story. Srila Prabhupada was in one temple. He was standing in the middle of the temple floor, and he was talking to one devotee who was with him. And one respectable gentleman came in, and he came right over to Prabhupada. Prabhupada greeted him, and immediately Prabhupada turned to the devotee and said, "Go get him some Mahaprasadam." So the boy left and went back into the pujari room, and the pujari had just put the offering on the altar. And so he said to the devotees, "There's no Maha now, but you just wait until the offering is over and it'll be available." So the devotee went back to Prabhupada and told him, "Prabhupada, there's none available now, we have to wait for the offering is over." Prabhupada said, "No, get it now." So the boy went back into the pujari room. At that time, the pujari was chanting his Gayatri. And the devotee walked right past the pujari onto the altar, picked up the devotee deity's plate, and came out. And then the pujari got shocked. And he came after the devotees, and they both ran to Prabhupada at the same time, and Prabhupada was there. So who's wrong? Yeah. The pujari is not wrong. He was acting properly. The boy was acting according to Prabhupada's instructions.